Yo, what's up? I go by 20 Paths on the internet. I've been mixing for 4 years and I also run a school community, Simple Mixes. Check it out, link down below. Today I'm just going to be talking about newer mixers just squashing their music, ramming it into a limiter, and how to not do that and still get loudness out of your track. Starting off with this, just jamming your track into a limiter is not going to make it sound perceivably louder. It's just going to squash your entire track. Now, loudness does not mean the peak level. What I mean by this is a limiter only controls the highest peaks. True perceived loudness is measured by average energy over time, LUFS, not how close the waveform gets to zero. So squashing it into the limiter, getting closer to zero, that's not actually what makes something sound louder. When you smash a track into a limiter, you raise the peaks but often lower the average loudness relative to the new ceiling. The track can look loud on a peak meter while sounding smaller and weaker. Next, you destroy the dynamics that create the impact. So loudness is heavily influenced by contrast, by like the transient snare hits, kicks and all that. And then hard limiting flattens those peaks and reduces the dynamic range. Without those sharp impacts, the brain perceives the track as flatter, less powerful, and ultimately quieter. Next, the streaming platforms will turn it down. Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, Tidal, etc. all normalize loudness, usually around -14 LUFS integrated. A track that you slammed to -6 or -8 gets turned down significantly more than a dynamic mix. The end result will be quieter relative to another track that's more well balanced and has more perceived loudness, and that is moderately limited versus yours that's just slammed. Now I'm going to be talking about how to actually get that perceived loudness. So it's mostly psychological. It's driven by frequency balance, density, transient impact, harmonic content, and contrast, not just how close your peaks get to 0 decibels. So number one, prioritize the mid-range energy. It's literally the most important. That's where our human hearing is that mid-range. You got to get that right, or else everything else is just not gonna sound good at all. Human hearing is most sensitive roughly between 1 to 5 kilohertz, and especially 2 to 4 kilohertz. Making sure that your core elements are in that range and present in that range is really important. This would be everything in that foreground as well as your lead, whatever you choose to be your lead. So everything in the foreground and your lead should be present in that range for sure. Now, while doing this, you should cut the competing low mids 200 to 500 that create that quote-unquote mud and force you to push your volume later. Use gentle processing boosts around 2 to 5 and add air 10 to 16 to increase that clarity and cut through without raising the overall level too much, because these are smaller frequencies. The bigger the frequency, you want that to be lower, because those are going to be the first frequencies to actually hit the limiter. Always check in mono. Mid-range that disappears in mono will feel quieter on many systems, so the goal of mixing is to get that balance and translation. So if it's not translating in mono, it's probably not going to translate everywhere else. The next thing you should do is to control and shape dynamics. Don't just squash everything using compression. Whenever you're using compression, sounds that have lots of fluctuation in dB, you want to use it to often shorten that range of dB and get everything sounding more consistent. That's the way that I think about it whenever I'm using compression on individual tracks or even buses, just trying to get everything to sound more controlled. When you're using compression, try to not have as fast of an attack time. That way you can let those transients really peek through. So multi-band compression is pretty powerful for controlling those problematic ranges. This could be just straight low mids, straight mids, straight high mids, or just highs or low in whichever range that you're trying to control on a specific sound or an entire bus. Another thing that you can do is add harmonics, so like saturation and stuff like that. So digital sounds, they often sound thinner, quieter than analog styles, because they analog have natural saturation from those tubes and all that type of shit. I'm not very sure on the specifics on that type of shit, but basically they have shit that the circuitry it runs through, it adds harmonics to the sound and makes it sound better. Another thing is managing your low end ruthlessly. Sorry, I can't English properly right now. So what this means is that every instrument that doesn't have, that is not like the bass and sub, remove that shit so it's not competing later. That way your sub and your bass and your kick and all that shit can really make itself known, just punch through. You should also be side chaining your kick and bass or sub, whatever it is. That way they're not competing and adding together and then making everything louder. They should be working cohesively and not interfering with each other. This also makes it easier for the limiter to limit and not over limiting the low end and then just fucking everything up. So thumbs up. Another thing is gain staging and headroom. So having good gain staging and not having one individual track just absolutely smashing the red or going into the red, it's muy bueno, so don't do that. Me personally, I like to keep my stuff around -12 to -15, and at the quietest end, -18 decibels whenever I'm gain staging. Usually I'll stick to that like 12 to 15, that way I have plenty of headroom to then push into that limiter. Now the reason why you want this is because whenever sounds are played together, they add together, unless they are the exact same frequency. If they're the exact same frequency, they're playing at the same time, they'll cancel out. So the more sounds that you had playing at once, the more it's like adding whatever the number is. So like, I'll just give an example, like 2 + 1 + 5 + 3 + 4. These are all, it's just all those numbers are just different waveforms. So clearly you want the most room. So let's say your limiter is at like 20. All those numbers added together will probably get you over 20. I don't know, I'm not gonna add all that, but you get what I'm saying. So the lower that you can make the numbers then add up before and then not hit 20, the better. Alright, that's it for today. See ya.